Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You are welcome to look at all my books: Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, and Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children. And you can find everything on Amazon or my website, dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. I am happy to have brand new guest on, David Bond. We've got questions as to how can a foreign government issue a custody order for an American child via forced adoption, overriding a pre-existing American custody order, refusing to return him to his American father despite zero safety concerns. How can the American government remain complicit? And how can a woman internationally abduct a child and pay to have his father killed, commit multiple assaults, and I believe 2 other kidnappings, and yet still not face criminal consequences for her actions? And I'm very sorry about what's happened to you and your son. David Bond, welcome to Slam the Gavel.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a long intro, isn't it?
Well,
Because there's a lot going on in this case.
exactly. How did you find out that she took off to another England? How did you find that out?
We had a paternity hearing in Oklahoma, and it happened to be the very day after she was out of the country because she wanted to avoid confirming paternity and be able to flee first. So that way she thought, oh, I'll be protected. We won't know who the father is, and I can just play dumb. She thought she could duck out of court.
So she was that fast. So, but what about the passport? Like, she would have to sign, you both would have to sign off, or how did she pull this off?
Well, that's the amazing thing, is that we actually had requested that from the judge in Oklahoma.
Mhm.
And we also had text records and a witness confirming that she was planning to leave the country with him.
Mhm.
And she even bragged about the Hague conventions just a few months after he was born. She even brought that up. So we had a heads up, and the system didn't listen, of course.
Yeah, that says a lot for our system as far as protecting children. So what
Yeah, especially when you have a witness statement. We had actual text messages and records of conversations. She was specifying what countries she was considering. Um, and somehow that's ignored.
and this happens, this can happen to anyone. I got to make that clear. This can happen to moms and dads, and it has. And no one believes these stories until it happens to you.
Yep. I remember I had a conversation with Child Services in Oklahoma, and they told me that they had talked to the mother about my concerns and that she said she wouldn't leave the country. Don't worry. And I was like, it doesn't matter what gender, it doesn't matter if it's the father or the mother. You can't just take their word for it if you have some evidence against it.
Mhm.
Um, and what's the harm in freezing her from getting him a passport? Like that's not controversial. That should be the least they do. And they wouldn't do that.
I mean, I've gone through customs and they've looked over the passport, but I had to have a passport for my child and myself.
Yeah.
She pulled this off pretty quick.
Yeah, pretty quickly. What she was able to do was a lot of the custody case was during COVID lockdowns. So
Mhm.
there were a lot of delays. There was a snowstorm the one time, and that caused a 2 month delay. It was nuts. Um, I think Oklahoma was a little late to the game when it came to court over Zoom.
Mhm.
So they got backed up by a couple months where all cases were completely frozen. So that's what I was told anyway.
Right, right. That disturbed everything for a lot of people. Um,
And that bought her a lot of extra time to
Extra
make
time.
preparations.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's extra
And she
time.
knew that.
Right. That's extra time to alienate for sure. So Now, she apparently flew to Sweden and was rejected, and then she flew to England. I don't know where she thought maybe she'd have a chance.
Yeah, that's my understanding. The State Department had told the embassy that the passports were clearly for Sweden,
Mhm.
and she had initially did go there because they had me filling out a Hague application for Sweden, and then they called and they said, just we got to change the country on there. You can keep everything else, but and she was in London, and that's because my son was in the care of the UK government, the Coventry City Council. They'd already removed him from her, and that's how they flagged it. And there was also a warrant for her at that point for a child abduction.
Mhm. Now, this has just gone awry because the High Court judge in the UK, Judge Levine, am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah,
Levine,
I think it's leaving, but I could be
Levin.
saying it wrong. Yeah.
So he also made an error. Tell me about that.
Yeah, Justice Levin. So I filed the Hague application, and I won't say her name, but my son's mother, her argument was, well, I left the country before paternity was even confirmed legally. So she was in the clear. But the nuance is that you don't have to have even paternity or custody figured out yet. You don't need to have that figured out. What you need is a court to be seized by the issue of custody. So as long as you already have a custody case that's begun, you can't. The parent can't just take the kid and flee the country,
Mhm.
which seems pretty obvious. Otherwise, parents would do this all the time. I mean, they
Mhm.
still do. But this judge, Justice Levin, refused to look at that nuance. She said there was no custody case in the U.S.
That's an egregious, uh, horrible mistake on her part. You had custody over here in Oklahoma. You had the custody
Yep.
order. And that judge, we were talking yesterday, that judge also attached on some other provision with the custody order.
Yes, there was a thing called a right of assistance, which really led to it showed the gravity of the situation. The right of assistance compels any law enforcement to retrieve my son, and it said by any means necessary. So it was a very aggressive, like, get this kid and give him to the father and do it now kind of order. It was excellent. It was the right thing to do.
Mhm.
And the UK treated it like toilet paper. They didn't care.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't care. And God bless that judge in Oklahoma.
Yeah, yeah, that's been the saving grace in all this, because when I had that custody order registered where I live now in California, the UK contacted the judge here and got him to dissolve the order. He dissolved my custody order.
Why would he do that?
I mean, it's fine because it's still in Oklahoma,
Mm.
but that adds just a layer of complication that's unnecessary. And I don't know why he did that. It was a private discussion he had with the UK Coventry City Council.
So then, okay, so then England called Oklahoma and just got this custody thing dissolved, pretty much.
In California, so the custody order was in Oklahoma.
Okay.
And then we had it also registered in California. In California, they dissolved the one over here. But the original in Oklahoma remains intact and in force.
Got you. Now, also, there's so many problems. Your child is now 4 years old and you have not seen him for how
Yeah, I
long?
have not seen him since last time I saw him in person was May 24th, 2022, which is unbelievable. And the last time I saw him remotely was October 5th, 2023.
And right now he is with a foster mother over in
Yeah,
England.
he's been in foster care, which has been the one good thing of all this. The woman, Jane Ballinger, wonderful woman. She had facilitated a lot of the remote visits for a little over a year. So she's really gotten to know him, of course. It's been 3 years, and has got to know me pretty well too,
Mhm.
which is why she would have been a terrific witness if the judge hadn't blocked her.
And that would be Judge Levine again.
Yep, yep. And we know why she did that. We know why. It's because the judge had ordered my son to resume contact with his mother. And this was after she was diagnosed with psychosis, after she was evidenced by the police, an investigation in the UK, that she had hired someone to have me killed, and that she had communicated to a friend of hers exactly the dollar amount and why she was doing it. And then that's, of course, on top of the fact that she had abducted my son, was starving him,
Mm-hmm.
had a burn on his leg, was letting his teeth go, never brushed his teeth, just horrible neglect.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that, and the judge wants her to see my son again in person. And I said, this is going to be emotional. This is going to cause emotional or psychological or even physical harm. This is guaranteed. This is reckless. You're playing Russian roulette with my child to test her mental capacity, which was the judge's argument. She said, we have to see if it works.
Whoa.
If she can't handle this, then how can I ever rule that she gets him back? So let's see. It was literally a test. And she said it, and I have it on video.
A social experiment. Very interesting. Because
Yeah.
we were talking yesterday that there was a supervised visit she had with him at some point.
And that was it. That was the test. And they have the visit. And what does she do? She scoops him up, walks out of the building. According to the security camera, it took only 1 minute. So that tells you how good the security was there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they knew she'd try this. They documented that they feared she would try this. So they made no effort to prevent it. And then she proceeded to assault the supervisor and the foster care, beat them both, also on camera.
While holding your child.
Yeah, well, what the social worker did, and God bless her for it, she was able, once she got a hold of my son, she went to the ground and just covered him with her body.
Oh.
And then the mother jumped on her and just started ripping her hair out and beating her. She was hospitalized.
And this judge did what after this? Or nothing,
Well,
probably.
at that point, the judge was like, well, we're going to have to probably remove her from the case because she's not mentally competent. They chalked it up to pure mental illness. And I have no doubt that's some involvement, but I can't diagnose her. But um, then she was allowed to have basically a surrogate. So she put forward her sister in Florida. And then the case continued, except this way, because the mother was briefly committed, she couldn't be cross-examined. And then the judge blocked us from cross-examining the aunt, her sister. But I was cross-examined for at least 20 plus hours. It was like, so we can demonize one side, but we can't ask questions on the other. That's a rigged court. By
Oh, yes.
brazenly, it's bizarre that was done so shamelessly.
When
And
it's
I recorded every minute of it.
right, right. And you have it on your link tree, which I'm going to post in the podcast notes. So everyone can
Yeah.
go look and see your evidence. And this is to me a no-brainer. She's already assaulted someone. That judge should have just said, Okay, the experiment failed, father gets the child.
Yeah, especially because, there's a lot of cases where there's false accusations in custody cases. That happens all the time, and the wrong people are often believed.
Hmm.
Um, but they didn't even do that in my case. They
Yeah.
didn't accuse me of any neglect or abuse, nothing. They praised my relationship with my son. They themselves, when they had the first, because they did their own little custody hearing, which is nuts that they just ignored the U.S. custody
Yeah.
order, and then they decided to have their own custody case. And their opener for that was to say that when they observed the video of me in contact with my son, they said, we see someone who is kind, careful, and who has a meaningful relationship. That's what we have as common ground.
Hmm.
And I went, okay,
Yeah.
what are we here for? What's the problem?
So
That was their opener. It was
uh,
amazing.
that is absolutely even appalling because we had talked again yesterday about the UK being our ally and
Yeah.
how if they're our ally, then why don't they just return your child? This is a
Oh,
no-brainer.
and that's why I pointed out to the State Department about Brittany Griner.
Hmm.
I believe we had traded a Russian arms dealer to get her back, and she actually, she was an adult. She was in possession of a substance she wasn't allowed to have in Russia. She was facing a consequence for that,
Hmm.
you know. But we traded an arms dealer to get her back. So I told the State Department. I said, well, why can't we pick up the phone and work out a deal with our best buddy in the UK
Hmm.
and get this 2.5-year-old child back? Now 4.5. And they said, well, if he was in Russia, we would do exactly that. But we currently have this war in Ukraine. It's a NATO ally. We don't want to offend them. And I'm just like, I don't. It didn't make any sense to me.
And this was the Biden
It made
administration.
no sense to me. Yeah, yeah.
So the
And
Biden
I've tried to reach
administration.
the UK ambassador too, um, and she won't respond to anything. I've tried calling the DOJ. It goes straight to voicemail. Often the voicemail's full. It's like, where is my government?
Right.
I don't see it.
I'm hearing this from a lot of parents. They contact the DOJ and there is crickets.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know what they do.
I don't
you
either.
know,
No, I don't either. And we had
because they're
talked,
not doing their job. We know that
yeah,
they're not doing their job.
and the Biden administration doesn't care about your child either.
No, they clearly don't.
This is
And you can get into that with the whole hormone treatment with kids and everything. And I mean, there's a lot that seems to indicate that the Biden administration really isn't too fond of children.
it's
There's a
very
lot of that.
disturbing. Oh, it's very disturbing. And it's all it would take would be a simple phone call, return the child, we've got the custody order. It's black and white.
It's very clear. Since August of 2021, I've had a sole custody order in the United States. And yet, concurrently, the UK issued their own custody order for my uh, son's aunt in Florida. And Florida accepted that order without allowing any debate, discussion. The judge specifically said, we're not going to debate the merits today. It was just purely about jurisdiction. They had no interest in, like, why was this order issued? Why are they trying to override a pre-existing U.S. order? I'm pretty sure that's not even legal anyway.
Mhm, mhm,
So, um, and we can unravel this. I'm told by my lawyers that this can be still fought.
mhm.
Nothing's in stone, but the fact that they're going to temporarily place him with the aunt when there's serious safety concerns without any debate is madness.
And the aunt should have flown over and picked him up months ago, right?
Yep, she had since the order was initially domesticated in Florida by the UK, and I believe it was October October, November of last year. But then it had to go. We had to have a few hearings first. Because I was trying to fight it. My lawyers were saying, no, accept it, because otherwise he might get trapped in the UK. This is the only way we can get him back to the United States at this point, and then we'll fix it. And my argument was, I don't want to cave to any of this. Like, if something being done is wrong, I want to fight it. And if I lose, I lose. But I want to show I fought every step of the way. I wasn't complicit in any stage of this, because if something horrible went on in Florida, and I didn't try to stop that, maybe that would be a better strategy. I wasn't willing to take that risk.
So you have no contact with this aunt, your ex's sister?
No, the only contact we did have, she sent one email, and it was simply, it also tagged the legal team and the Coventry City Council. And it was them jointly saying that visits would be ended.
And that was your 1 hour a month video visit?
Yeah, for the month of September and October, we were down to just 1 hour a month. They had been gradually reducing it. One time they even phrased it, they had they called it phasing out the father.
Oh.
I heard them say that because they wanted to make sure that he transitions to the aunt. So they're literally trying to sever that attachment, which they can't do. Above all, it's stupid. That's not going to work. He takes the foster carer's cell phone and runs away with it, trying to call me.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to forget. He's 4.5 now. He's well aware.
I've lived over in England, and they're not into oral care either. So are they doing anything with his teeth?
Yeah, they said, fortunately, because they were baby teeth, that they'll once they fall out, then the new ones should be fine. But they were able to clean them up as best they could.
Oh.
There were 2 of them that were broken, but they said because they're baby teeth, that luckily they're they'll just fall out. He had a burn on his leg. According to the reports, it was from a hot tea kettle. I don't know how that ends up on a baby's leg. Making hot tea on the floor and then walking out of the room. Like, how does that happen?
Oh.
And he was so weakened from malnutrition that he had to be hooked up to an IV drip for nutrients initially, because he was too weak to even chew. He couldn't chew food.
Oh, probably also with his teeth bothering him as well. He was probably in pain with his teeth as well. This is terrible.
I'm sure he was miserable. And
oh my goodness.
When she was questioned about his malnutrition, her excuse was, well, he can't eat anything because he's allergic to everything. She said, oh, he's allergic to milk and wheat. I have footage of him eating milk and wheat.
Yeah.
Oh, he's allergic to dogs. I have him petting a dog. It's like,
you're right.
I put some pretty good videos up for people to see that this woman is just a pathological liar, likely mentally ill. But also evil. Because when you hire someone to kill somebody, that's a special,
right.
That's a special quality.
She did that when she was over in the UK, and they didn't care to prosecute her on that at all either.
No. What was amazing is that it's not like I found it or something. They did their own investigation and came across this because she was bragging to a friend of hers, and then that friend turned her in. So they came to me with this report. They said, listen, we have this credible evidence. We have a witness. And that was January of 2022. So they knew that she had this intent. She even told the police that if the person failed, that she'd do it. There's call logs of her calling the 999. It's like their 911 over there. And she's in that repeatedly saying, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. And it's like, okay, you have all of this documentation. Why isn't she arrested? I believe she was arrested, but she was not charged. They just chalked it up to mental illness, and she got like 30 days in the mental ward to be evaluated.
Mm. Yeah.
It's like, at what point is it criminal, and at what point is it pure mental illness? At what point is it a combination? In which case, I say round up to criminal.
Mhm, mhm. Well, I used to be a psych nurse when I first started out, and I can tell you this is how I view it. Someone can be mentally ill and yell at you and scream at you, and then the following year, I was working in the ER doing psych evals to get people up to the floor or whatever, and she came into the ER, and she totally remembered and apologized for her behavior of screaming at me when I was up on the floor. So I do
Mm.
believe these people that are mentally ill, I do believe they remember everything they've done. I really do.
Yes.
After hearing that, I was
Yep.
shocked.
I hope she remembers what she's done, because someday maybe she'll have a shame button and realize, oh, what have I done? And then after those two assaults during the abduction attempt at the visiting center,
Mhm.
they took her to the hospital again, and she assaulted three more people, including, according to their own report, she dumped coffee in a nurse's eyes.
Uh,
The nurse had to go to the hospital because she couldn't see. Not was partially blind, couldn't see, according to their own report. And I'm like, what does this person have to do to go to jail? And then at that point, though, that's when she contacted the embassy. And I don't know how she did this, but she did. She got a 3-day, 72-hour passport. And she came back to the US because they had taken her passport, at least. They were investigating. And then the embassy made an exception and snuck her out of the country, flew her into New York.
uh,
And then 3 months later, I get a call. Oh, we just picked her up on the warrant. It was like, wait a minute, you guys knew she left 3 months ago,
Gosh.
and you knew she was intending to kill me? Would have been nice to give me a heads up. I am
Mhm.
convinced the Coventry City Council made a point not to mention that,
Yeah,
because they would have been thrilled with that result.
do you think they were being paid off in some way? Something had to have been going on in that area?
Well, I know that they do get bonuses for adoptions. So that's why forced adoptions are so rampant in the UK. I believe they're one of only 2 countries now that still do that. Because the rest of the world recognized that it's completely immoral to rip a child away from biological parents and forcibly place them with other parents. Um, you make that an absolute last resort when you're trying to work with the parents. If you have a parent that's, has a drug addiction, you can work with them. There's ways to do that. You don't just go, oh, you can never see your child ever, ever, ever again. That's crazy. But that's what they're doing over there, and they definitely get paid for it. I know Coventry City Council gives a $34,000 bonus.
That is crazy. See, people don't know
And there
this.
was no, and there's one local authority over there that recently, it was either a quarter or $500,000 they got as a bonus because they exceeded their quota for the adoptions. So it is, and that's because they're increasingly privatizing their health service over there under the company Serco. And of course, every private company, what are they about? Profit. Spend less, make more.
Everything you said just made sense because when I lived over there, their system was struggling. So now they found a way to fix their healthcare problem, which is through these
And
forced
that and
adoptions.
that includes the family courts.
Yes,
Their family court system has been privatized. It's literally a for-profit organization that's
that's
puppeteering this thing. It's
ah,
disgusting.
yes.
Because I was against their government.
Mm-hmm.
It was me versus the Coventry City Council. I'm like, why am I fighting you for my own kid who I have custody of, who's
Mm-hmm.
an American, by the way?
Yeah.
both parents American. Like, why do you even care? Just give them back to the U.S. authorities. Do that. Hand them over to child services in the U.S. and let them sort it out. That would have been fine.
Hmm.
Just wash your hands of it if they were worried about liability. But
Right.
they wouldn't take that L. I gave them that option. I was like, just give them child services. I'll sign off on that because then they'll give them to me.
Right.
But they wouldn't do that either. And he's still over there.
And she lands in New York and then she goes to her sister's. Do you think?
I don't know because there was a little bit of time that passed, but I know they picked her up in Oklahoma. So I think she had gone back to her house, made
Mhm.
her way back to her house there. And then she was picked up on the warrant that was issued by Los Angeles, and they went over, extradited her here. And then she got off on a fun technicality. So she was charged with felony child concealment and felony kidnapping, and it was on a $200,000 bond. Um, Goes in front of the judge, and she says, "Well, we don't know who the father is. He's not the dad." And the judge, and according to the district attorney, she said, "Well, we would have had to subpoena the DNA test that was done in the United Kingdom, the
Mm.
lab technician that did the test." And apparently, they didn't think that was worth the expenditure. They didn't consider that, hey, we could do a DNA test right now. Let's do another one. I'll pay for it. Also, I already have a paternity order and a full custody order. What are we? Why are we still questioning if I am who I am?
Mhm. Mhm.
And they just let her off. So she'll never be able to, because they can't have I think they call it double jeopardy. Um, she can't be charged again. So she got away with international kidnapping. But they're still looking at charging her with conspiracy to commit murder because
Mhm.
the evidence is there. LAPD is looking at it. It's the district attorney's office that is oddly resistant. And I'm trying to get answers on that now. Because it's now, it's 2 years later.
That's a miscarriage of justice. Justice delayed, justice denied. This is
Yeah,
really your case is so horrific.
it's going to make a good novel, which I am working on. But
Mhm.
boy,
Mhm.
to live it is, it's surreal. Because a lot of times I've been like, this can't be accurate. This can't actually be happening. And then I read the UK police report with the call logs of her describing that she's going to kill me, and apparently asked an ambulance driver for advice
Mhm.
on how to kill me in a legal way. In a legal way?
Legal.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you're asking people of authority for advice on how to commit murder. Brilliant. This is this is a dangerous human being, and I don't know where she is right now. But I do know that the aunt in Florida has said in writing her intent to give my son back to her. So
That
that's the biggest reason why the placement there is so dangerous. And the judge in Florida, it was erroneous for him not to allow us to debate that and really sort it out.
yeah, that's I think both of them are sick. Her sister and the ex, they're both sick.
And the grandmother.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's just a fun layer to this. Nancy McAnooey. Um, she has sent dozens of emails and tweets at me, threatening to kill me, shoot me. She sent the caliber of bullet she intends to use. She once invited me to see my son in Oklahoma so she could shoot me. It's like, oh yeah, come see him. Come see him. And I have all of this,
So the
but they're doing
grandmother,
nothing because she's
yeah, the
yeah.
grandmother's
Oh, they're all
threatening.
yeah. Yeah, she's threatening to kill me. Who cares? And the mother even called the LAPD officer that was investigating
Mm.
and threatened her, threatened the investigator. And they're still hesitating on charges.
Wow.
I know if I did what she did as a man, I know for a fact I'd be definitely in a jail cell for at least a decade. If I
Oh,
did all
and
the things
more.
that she's done,
Right, and more.
much more.
Right.
Yeah, should be much more. But even in Los Angeles, it would be 10 years because they're very lenient. Easy 10. And she's got nothing.
Well, I mean, are they even able to locate her?
Presumably they can. I mean, all she has to use is any device. They should be able to track where she is. She does still own a house in Oklahoma, so it's
Mhm.
pretty unlikely she'd entirely abandon that. Um, I know she did recently purchase property in late 2021
Mhm.
near her sister in Florida. So clearly that was set up. She was like, "Oh, I'll just act crazy. I don't have to testify. They won't give them back to me, but they probably weren't going to anyway. They'll go to my sister, and then she'll give them to me." Uh-huh. Because she is smart. I will say that. I mean, she's got some clear screw ups, but she is an intelligent person. So she's a chess player. She's often bragged about that.
Well, crazy like a fox.
Yeah. In fact, while she was in the UK, one of the only texts I did receive from her said, "I've always beat you at chess." I'm like, well, this isn't a game. Like
Yeah,
just the
this
language she uses, the lack of seriousness.
right.
And it's like, this is our child. You think this is chess? International kidnapping?
Mhm.
That's fun.
To put a child
It's
through
sick.
that. Right.
And then she claims she's a victim. She's actually gone on Twitter and compared herself to a victim of the Holocaust. And then she said it in a YouTube interview that's still up, where she says that too, that she was held in a concentration camp in the UK.
Okay, that is
I'm like, listen, their government screwed up, but they don't have concentration camps.
yeah,
Sorry.
that is crazy. Okay.
So she's the victim, did all that, but she's the victim. It's amazing.
But she
It's
doesn't
amazing. But
yeah, she doesn't even acknowledge your own, child being a victim. He's not the victim.
yeah, and she left him behind. After they removed him from her for abuse, she then proceeded to assault people, act out violently, then fled the country to avoid charges and to kill the father. Da, da, da,
Mhm.
da. And it's like, what kind of mother? It's just sick. It's really sick. I tried for too long to try to make sense of her, and I realized you can't, because if someone is that unhinged,
Right, and
that cruel, you
she's
don't want
beyond
to think like that. You don't want to.
yeah, she's beyond a
Just can't do
personality
it.
disorder.
Yeah, I don't. I again, I can't diagnose her, but I know some medication she's previously been on, and there was like 6 of them. All of them are common for bipolar, and 3 of them were common for schizophrenia.
Mhm.
So I don't know. 3 of them having the dual use, um,
Oh, yeah.
but I don't know. Something's wrong. Something's wrong.
Yeah, I'm so sorry this has happened to you. I can't imagine your stress level. Yeah, how are you coping with all this stress?
Um, well, I try to find some of the humor in it because it's just so ridiculous.
Mm.
Um, in fact, last November, she did text message me. She wanted to get back together,
Hmm. Mhm.
and normally I would not have responded at all, but she hadn't messaged me in any way for at least 2.5 years, and I couldn't believe she had the guts to do that. And all I replied was, "After you hired someone to have me murdered, abused and traumatized our son, you want to get back together?" And she replied, "Context." And I was like, I'm not going to respond to him. That's it. That's it. This is a really sick person. It made me feel sick to even be corresponding with somebody like that. It's like there's something seriously wrong with this woman.
Did your lawyers acknowledge that? What did they say about that? Her contacting you?
No, yeah, that in terms of the custody thing, it's irrelevant because she's already ruled out as dangerous. That's the one good thing in all this is that all parties recognize she's dangerous to children.
Oh,
There's no disagreement about that.
mm-hmm.
Although stunningly, when she was briefly in Los Angeles County Jail, I think she was in there for almost 3 months.
Wow.
Um, the UK tried to get her remote visitation with my son while she was in the jail. That's how desperate they, some whatever reason, were still trying to somehow keep those two together, knowing how dangerous she was.
Mm-hmm. And then here's
In
England.
fact, yeah. Well, and then also in the UK, the Guardian over there,
Mhm.
um, she testified. My solicitor did a good job cross-examining her. Um, she admitted that placement of my son in Florida would be riskier because it's more likely that the mother or grandmother would be able to get him because they both live there and it's their own family versus with me.
Mm-hmm.
So they testified he'd be safer with me. The Guardian's recommendation was that he not go with me. So she literally testified, and I have all the video for actually saying that's less safe. That's not where he should go. And it's like, what? That's intentional endangerment. Are you out of your mind?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and the aunt, she lives in a small trailer with 6 other people,
Oh,
has 2
gee.
pit bulls and guns.
Oh my God.
She's also physically disabled.
Oh, and that's why she can't go get him over in England.
Maybe that's a hangup. I don't know.
Well,
I just know it was some sort of back related disability. I didn't see any paperwork on it,
well, if it's
but
back
they
related,
that's all they said.
she's not going to be able to
Yeah, how's
carry
she gonna
him.
pick him up?
Right.
Yeah, yeah, it makes no sense. None of it makes any sense. It's the stupidest case. That's how I've kind of coped. Is that even when I was being cross examined by the UK, there's times in the footage where you can see me on the screen smiling because I just couldn't believe how clownish this was. It was like
Right.
this must be a joke. This is like a prank. This is so stupid. I mean, they were asking me about things that, like, for example, the mother said that I had microwaved a cat,
Mm-hmm.
specifically in 2009. I didn't meet her till 2015.
Mm-hmm.
What are you talking about, lady? And yet the UK people, that was one of their big questions. They said, we know there was an incident with a cat in the microwave. And they said, I'm not saying you turned the microwave on. I've got no evidence for this. I've got no evidence. I'm like, well, then why are you asking me? Like,
What?
what is this?
And that's irrelevant.
Yeah, it's just bizarre. And then after I had a meeting, actually just a few months ago, my final meeting with my UK solicitor, Jill Norrie. And she's a senior um, top person over there when it comes to child abduction cases.
Mm-hmm.
She's the person to go to. I couldn't believe that they covered that as though she was like a public defender. I was able to select her, and she was great. But she told me, she said, I don't believe legal arguments are the way to the local authorities' heart. So very clearly saying it's not about evidence. She said they make a judgment and they seldom change it. That's it. They
And
got a read on me for whatever reason, didn't like me.
mhm.
End of story.
And that's really it all comes down to those incentives. Do you think they could be getting ready to adopt him out?
I do worry about that. Um,
Ah,
I do worry about that. Now, if that were to happen, I believe the State Department would actually finally do something. I do think they would at that point because this is an American child. I have a valid custody order. The aunt, technically, as of right now, has a valid custody order. So 2 Americans have a claim to him. All his family is here.
Mm-hmm.
It would be very radical for them to put him up for adoption over there. But I can't put it past them, because every time I've said, oh, they won't do that, they've done it. So
Jeez. Geez,
yeah, they keep surprising me.
yeah, I've never been so disappointed in England in my whole life. When I read
It's
your
shameful.
story and spoke with you, you
I
think,
think most egregious was the social worker, Blessed Whore. There were a few social workers, but him in particular.
mm-hmm.
And what a name, Blessed Whore.
Blessed horror. Who can,
H
who would,
O R E. Yeah,
who would even, I don't know. I know people have changed their last names. That'd probably be a good idea.
yeah, recommended. But he lied on that stand under oath so brutally. I mean, he he had specifically said to me, because so we had a parenting assessment, so he's talking to me over Zoom, and I recorded that too. And he said, "We've positively identified you as providing emotional warmth to your son." It's
Mm.
like, okay, great. He goes on the stand and he said that there is a high risk of emotional harm. I was like, what you, huh? And that, on that level, at least 5, 8 times, just completely lied. And I have the video showing what he said before and what he said on the stand, and I've juxtaposed them in the videos.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just incredible, incredible, because everyone in that room knew better, because I provided them the video before we even, what they saw
Mm-hmm.
it. And it was also part of my appeal, which was, of course, rejected immediately.
So, hmm, with the State Department, are you able to contact them regularly, or are they just not taking your calls anymore?
They were often ignoring me. I think they found me to be annoying. But I was like, well, I know your department has a way to resolve this. And if for some reason you don't, you definitely can contact the department that does. Like, you know, don't pretend you're not powerful, a powerful organization here.
Mm-hmm.
You literally just have to make a phone call.
And to
It's
save a
not going to be,
child's life.
yeah, quite possibly. Um, they did recently ask me for, because initially I thought, well, my Hague application had been rejected by the judge over there. So the UK officially, by doing that, said, we're not going to return him. We don't recognize your jurisdiction at all. He's now under ours. So that's why they were able to then do their own custody case. They were like, he's ours. It's like he's not from the US. Of course he is, but
So for all
but
you,
I went to file again.
oh, you
I went to
did?
file
Okay.
another Hague application, and the State Department said, well, you can't open a second case, even though your previous one was rejected. It's technically open because you could appeal a second time or a third time. It's like, they're just going to keep rejecting it. I want to file a new one. And this time I want it filed not to say that the mother abducted him. I want it to list the Coventry City Council,
Mm-hmm.
because they're the ones not returning him and have no actual lawful reason for it. And that social worker, Blessed Whore, even, I said to him, I said that my rights are being violated. And he went, yep. On video, again, on video. And he was still allowed to testify against me. And it was like, he
Wow.
must have been paid. He
Yes.
must have been paid. Or he was possibly, and I, of course, have no prejudice against immigrants, but I believe that he was likely on a visa. His English was very, very poor. Very poor. So I think he may have also had a fear of being deported. And boy, that's a great way to control people.
Right.
Yeah.
So egregious what they've done to your son and you, and deprived him of your side of the family, cousins,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. For no reason. And he was not going to be able to meet my grandmother because she passed in 2022. Um,
Oh.
we knew he was in the UK and taken by their government in July 2021.
Mm.
So let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say it's a 6-month process. Whatever paperwork they got to do to return him to me, he would have easily still met his grandmother.
Hmm.
Easily.
I think it should just be a 3-month process. Why stretch
Yeah.
anything out?
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
have
3 months seems reasonable.
right, you have your custody order, all of this from this Oklahoma judge. Why didn't they contact your Oklahoma judge and talk to her?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Judge Kerr. And that's a good question. I don't know why. And my own lawyers didn't seem to make any effort to do that. They also didn't contact the LAPD officer that was investigating the mother.
Oh my God.
And another key thing that they ignored too, because the mother was making every accusation you could think of about me. And they at that point, they pretty much knew she was lying, but they were still trying to use what she said against me anyway, just to demonize me.
Mhm, mhm.
But one piece of evidence I showed them was that the Bellingham police in Washington state had done an investigation. She tried reporting me up there for whatever reason. And they did a thorough investigation and they found she had contacted dozens of police agencies in multiple states, shopping for a cop, trying to put her ex-partner in jail. She lied about her own name. She said she was in contact with the FBI and gave them a phone number to call. It was disconnected. So she just brazenly is a liar and documented as a liar, but the UK still treated her as if everything she said was valid enough to cross-examine me over. Did you microwave a cat? Do you operate a sex cult? Are you a terrorist? I'm like, are you kidding me?
God.
They have my records. Like they did a background check. They have everything. They did a drug test.
You know, they should have cross-examined her on that psych unit. That could have been done.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was really bizarre is that in March, it was March 2022, that's when they diagnosed her with intermittent psychosis. And they documented her as having um, paranoid delusional beliefs. So that was great. It was like, thank you. A few months later, they rule that she's fine. She's fine. No medication even recommended, released. You're like, huh, that period of time that they held her saying that she was nuts was the period of time that we had the Hague hearings.
Mm-hmm.
So she didn't participate. Huh. Interesting timing. And then suddenly she's
Yeah.
sane right when the time that she would have been cross-examined is over. It's like, how convenient. And how did this doctor flip testimony? And I have footage of that too. Dr. Declan Highland. He testified one thing in February, and then what he said that same May, night and day. He was asked if she acted inappropriately or had any violent behavior towards staff. He said, no, nothing. And even the judge called him out and said, yeah, but back in February, you said that she assaulted at least 3 people
Mm-hmm.
and blinded a woman by dumping hot coffee in the nurse's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, yeah, no, that was early. That was early on. It's like, we didn't say any period of time. Was
Oh.
he paid? By who? Because it's hard to think that these are truly dumb people. Not that going to college makes one smart, but you're talking about professional lawyers, judges, doctors. They must know what they're doing.
Mm.
They've got to be conscious of it.
Sometimes I
It's
think,
not incompetence.
well, sometimes I think these people are so smart, they're stupid. I know so many people like this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They think they're so clever, and that people aren't going to remember what they just heard before. Like they think that if they lie with confidence and they use big enough words, if they have an expanded enough vernacular,
Oh, yes.
then
Of the Queen's
they'll
spoken
they'll
English.
they'll get by because they sound professional.
Mhm.
But it's not hard to sound professional. That's just acting.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah,
feasible that a lot of these people, they're not professionals in any way, shape, or form. They're just essentially paid actors. The way they function, it sure seems that way.
at the expense of your son.
Yeah. And I've always said, like, it doesn't shock me that some adults commit violence on other adults. There's situations where I can see that happening, and it's like everybody has that breaking point. But when you are harming children, that's shocking to me.
Mhm.
That they're willing to go to those lengths. Like the fact that they allowed his homicidal mother to come back to the US and not tell me, the person she claimed she was going to murder, to not give me a heads up. Um, yeah, no, that sounds like something that adults would do. That an adult would do that to me. That doesn't shock me at this
Mhm.
point from humanity. But children, that's the step that I don't get. Why you're jeopardizing a child? What? How do you defend that? How can you possibly do it? But
I
they do it, and they
Yeah.
don't care, which is why they recently tried to threaten me with legal charges for having gone public with the case.
Oh,
And I was like, bring it. You're 15,000 miles away. They literally
yeah.
can't. They
They
don't
will
have the jurisdiction, you
Well,
know?
I'm wondering, could that judge in Oklahoma, can she call the State Department? Can she call over there the Coventry Police? Can she make some waves
She could. My attorney in Oklahoma said she's not willing to stick her neck out.
for a child to do the right thing?
She's not comfortable.
Well,
That's all I was told. I was like, oh, I'm sorry that she might have to make a difficult phone call and deal with a thick British accent for 20 minutes, but it'd clear a lot up.
yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh. This is an eye opener for a lot of people that don't understand the Hague Conference, any of this, the Hague Convention. You know,
Yeah, I should mention about Hague, so people know.
right.
You ever have a child abducted? That's what you file. Any country that's part of a signer of the Hague Conventions is part of this
Mhm.
process. Um, and the judge had rejected it on two grounds. One that we discussed previously, that no U.S. court was seized by the issue of custody, which was a lie. And the second reason that I didn't mention was they thought that if he was sent to the US with his father, it'd be really hard for the mother to come back when there's a warrant waiting for her. And the odds of her ever gaining custody was so low that he might be permanently separated from his mother, and that presented a grave risk of harm. And then it was just a couple months after that that the violent abduction attempt happened. I was like, well, you were just proven wrong on both grounds, 100%. How's it? She is the risk of harm.
Right, right, right,
Saying
and
their separation would be so damaging to him. I'm like, no, she's damaging him.
right. Yeah, this does not make sense. This is terrible.
No, it was a complete pro mother bias. It was a very feminist court. And I know there's cases where it's the exact opposite. They're prejudice against the mother. In
Mm,
this case, they were very much against me. The judge was female. The guardian was female. The person also representing the guardian was female. The opposing side attorneys were female. And it was like, okay,
mhm,
we see how this looks.
mhm.
She's making all these false abuse claims, which they admitted they had no evidence for, but only about her. They're always talking about the toxicity of the parents' relationship. And it's like, can you talk about me and my child?
Mhm, mhm.
Can we focus on that?
Yeah,
You
and
want to talk
focus.
about the other thing, that's fine with me, but there's no evidence for it. So what are we doing here?
And how about focusing on the Oklahoma custody order?
Yeah, like the law is clear. And they're also the reason we finally got that order, shockingly, was actually because of the grandmother who slipped up and admitted, she said to the Guardian ad litem, Steve Holden in Oklahoma, the grandmother admitted that she feared her daughter was going to kill herself and the child in a murder-suicide. And this was after she'd fled the country. And we didn't know where. So he could have been anywhere in the world, didn't know if he was alive or not. And then later she tried to retract that testimony and flew out to the UK, found her daughter, and backed her 100% ever since. But that's how I got the emergency custody order, was once they heard that, they were like, oh,
Yeah.
he's not just out of the country, he's at high risk of death.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time we find him, oh, shockingly, he's already been removed from her care.
And she's on a psych unit for 3 months.
Yeah. And she was in and out of there. She was in there at one point for 3 months, then she was out, and she was back in for a
Yeah.
month. And I don't
They
have
all
the
do
full
that.
schedule, but they would once in a while update us.
Mm-hmm.
But it was bizarre. I thought the hardest part would be finding my internationally abducted son, not knowing what country he's in. That'd be the hard part, not getting him back after he was found. You know, as the left behind parent of a kidnapped child, you usually expect you're going to be given your child back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Unless there's a safety concern, which there wasn't.
Mm-mm.
They didn't even make up anything. Nothing. So yeah, international law has definitely been broken, for sure. And I believe the UK broke their own laws.
Oh.
And I believe several agencies here in the US are breaking laws strictly by this level of negligence. I'm sure there's a penal code or two that they violated. I mean, there's an obligation to protect kids.
And it's bad enough our State Department doesn't care about these kids, your kid, anybody else's children.
No, apparently not. I even tried to use the angle of, hey, you know, there's a lot of talk about possible war between Russia and the UK. It's probably just talk. That's how it goes. But I thought, well, you know, at some point you might want to recommend Americans in Europe come back. You know, they always do that when a war is about to break out.
Mm-hmm.
Could we even use that as a basis? Like, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
angles I feel right now we could use. Most notably, that any child psychologist would affirm that what they're doing here is child abuse. To separate my son from his father, who had a very close relationship with me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
going on 7+ months now. No contact. I'm just thankful that my last visit with him, I knew this was coming because I was going to go public. And I knew that'd be the backlash. They'd cut off all visitation. And I told him, I said, you're probably not going to be able to see daddy for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, why? And I was honest. And I said, I don't know. And I said, but you'll have to tell them when you want to talk to dad. You tell them.
Oh.
And he said, as angry as a 3-year-old could at that time, he said, I'll tell them.
Oh.
I'll tell them. But at least he knows.
Mm-hmm.
So I know he doesn't feel abandoned. He's conscious.
Mm-hmm.
And I even told him too, I said, I'd talk to you every day if I could.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I know you would, but they won't let me. It's a very bright boy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's on video and shown to the court. They don't care.
They don't
They
care.
won't even talk to me. They've never talked to me.
When was
Since
last?
they made their ruling. They won't speak to me on the phone. They won't speak to my lawyers. It takes 3 months for them to get a response at the embassy. Coventry City Council is that unprofessional. It's a criminal organization.
Well, shame on the State Department for not
Yeah,
doing anything.
yeah, because they have the power to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's specifically not them, there's absolutely a federal agency right now that I could get on the phone, and in an hour, I'd be told, hey, catch the next flight. Oh, and it's on us because your child was abducted and you've had to spend over almost $30,000 in this fight, even though they provided the attorneys over there. It's the lawyers here in the US. They're just draining me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's ridiculous. Like, this isn't how you're supposed to treat somebody whose child was abducted. It's just twisting the knife, insult to injury. It's you're supposed to help, not make it
Mm-hmm.
literally worse. It's it's amazing. And I've for the past 10 plus years, I've been an educator.
Mm-hmm.
I was a mall Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. It's like I'm really good with kids.
Yeah, and
Like
you're
I'm an I
safe. You're safe around children.
Yeah, yeah. Everything's been ruled out. They had child services in LA come over to my home, do background checks, inspected my vehicle, making sure the car seat's in tight. They did all that. The UK
Mm-hmm.
had LA do that for them. Los Angeles did that and sent the report saying all good, everything's great. And the UK is just like, yeah, but no.
So
Why?
they're holding your child hostage probably for some incentivized purpose.
They must be making money because there's no other explanation. Because as much as I believe they're likely actually sociopathic
Mm-hmm.
and evil, they still have to. Evil still has a motive, and it's usually money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're doing this solely to hurt him, but they certainly don't care if that's the consequence. And the foster care is very conscious of all this.
Mm-hmm.
For about 12, 13 months that I was in regular correspondence with her, she was in full agreement. She says it's ridiculous. I remember the one day my son we had a visit when he was in the bathtub, and he was all of a sudden having a fit, screaming, and we calmed him down. And it was because I hadn't made it for Christmas. We
Oh.
thought he'd be home by Christmas of 2021. So they initially told me that'd be likely. That it'd be not by his birthday in November, but Christmas is realistic. And here we are, almost middle of 2024. Like, how's this? Where's the referee? Where's the person that goes, wait, hey, what's going on here? Time out. This isn't okay. But he was throwing this fit, and the foster care said, I think he's really confused right now.
Oh.
And I said, I don't blame him. And I said, I'm confused too, Keanu.
Uh-huh.
And I told him, just think of it. You're on an adventure. You're in another country.
Mm-hmm.
And soon when you get to come home, you'll be on another adventure. And that's what life is. It's one adventure after another. So enjoy the one you're in while you're in it. And he seemed to have some understanding of that. He was still about 2. But he
Oh.
calmed down and just kind of looked at the camera like, okay,
And
okay.
does not need to go through this.
No, a parent shouldn't have to teach a 3-year-old to do uh, deep breathing exercises to ease their stomach pain from trauma.
My heart goes out to you. I'd like to have you come back on the podcast. If people want to reach you and talk to you, how can they? Just through your link tree?
Yeah, yeah, everything's in there. It's got links to the court footage videos are posted on YouTube, Rumble,
Mm.
on TikTok. I wrote the full account of everything on my Substack. That link's in there. Couple other podcasts I did. Anytime I do a podcast, I put a link up there. So yeah, everything's there. There's a GoFundMe page because the legal bills are piling up. I'm trying to
Mhm.
pay off the debt. Um, and there's a petition. Although these days I don't think most petitions are really read by the
Right.
people that receive them. But you got to try everything.
Oh, just yeah, I've gotta have you back on, with any updates, you know, uh, but I totally appreciate you sharing all of this with us because this will be heard near and far.
Yeah, yeah. I want as many people to hear it. That's
Oh,
all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get the word out because it's not just my case. There's no way I'm the only one.
exactly, exactly.
It's happened to a lot of people.
Mhm. Don't jump off, okay? Slam the Gavel's a
Yeah.
podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and join us again here in the future with David Bond and other exciting guests. I totally appreciate everything and you, David Bond, and I will be praying for you and to get your child reunited.
Thank you.